Here we want to try to calculate the finance charge on a credit card. So here's our scenario. Carrie has a Charge-It credit card with a balance of $672.89. Her current billing period goes from January 10th to February 9th, and below is her activity during this billing period. Find the monthly finance charge if Charge-It's APR, annual percentage rate, is 18.9%. So as we can see, she's starting out with a balance of $672.89. If she makes a payment, that's going to go down. It'll stay there for a little while until the next time she makes a purchase, which is January 27th. She buys gas for $45.78. It'll go up. It'll stay at that value for a little while, and then it'll go up again when she buys groceries on February 3rd for $178.53. And then whatever the balance is after that, it's going to stay there until the end of the billing period, which we know is on February 9th. So what we need to figure out is her balance is constantly changing. So how do we find a finance charge on what balance? And what we do is actually calculate the average daily balance. So that's what the first part of this video is on, is calculating the average daily balance. So what I want to do first is let's add in the starting point, the starting date of her period. So it's January 10th, and we know that the balance is $672.89. From here, we can calculate the balance as we go down from the payment to the purchase to the next purchase. So if we take $50 away from $672.89, that's going to be $622.89. I need to now add $45.78, so that's going to give me $668.67. And finally, add in her last purchase of $178.53. That gives me a balance of $847.20. And let's also put in the last date of her billing period of February 9th. So here's our February 9th. This is the ending of her billing period. Now from here, we want to calculate her average daily balance, but let's look at a different, much simpler scenario. So down below, let's create a new scenario. So for average daily balance, and let's consider maybe the month of September, because there's 30 days in September. That makes it a little bit easier. So let's do a scenario kind of like similar to above, but with a nicer number. So let's say somebody has a $200 balance, and it's going to stay at $200 for 5 days. So what we can say is it's going to be $200 for 5 out of the 30 days of September, or you could reduce that and say it's really 1/6 of the time it's at $200. Now let's say you make a payment on that 6th day, so the balance changes. It goes down to $150. Let's say it stays there for 10 days. So 10 out of 30 days, it's going to be at $150. So that's 1/3 of the month. And finally, let's make a big purchase of $200. So we're going to go up to $350, and it's going to stay there till the end of the month. So that's the last 15 days. So 15 out of 30 is half. Half of the month is at $350. If we add all of these up, we get what's called the average daily balance. And on this one, it's really $258.33. Now, when we actually do our calculations up above here, we want to make it a little bit simpler. So what I can actually do is I can factor out this dividing by 30 and really just multiply the balance by the number of days in each of these situations, and then divide the total by 30. So if I take 200 times 5, 150 times 10, 350 times 15, add it up, and then divide by 30, I get the same average daily balance. So the tricky part, usually on these calculations of average daily balance, is really being able to accurately calculate the number of days it's at each balance. So that's what we'll work on our top part. So let's calculate the number of days between January 10th and January 16th. And an easy way to do it is just to do by tally marks. So start out with the 10th and just tally mark up. Don't include 16, because on the 16th, the balance changes. So it's really only going to stay at this $672.89 for the 10th up to the 15th. So if we tally mark those off, we'll get a tally mark for the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, which really turns out to just be 6 days. So the number of days at that first balance is 6. An easy way to do that, to figure out how many days from like the 10th up to the 16th, but not including, we can just do 16 minus 10, which gives me 6. So for the next one, if I want to know how many days there are from the 16th up to the 27th, but not in counting the 27, that's just 27 minus 16. So we should have 11 days there. The next one gets a little trickier because we're starting in January 27th, but we're running all the way through up to February 3rd. So since there's 31 days in January, you might be tempted just to go 31 minus 27 is 4. And then I've got 4 days. I have to add to it February 1st and 2nd, but not the 3rd, so it sounds like 6. But what we're missing is one actual day, because if we do our tally marks and look at how many days are there from the 27th up through the 31st, we're going to have the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30, and 31. So that's a total of 5, which means then when we add up the February 1st and 2nd, that does give us a total of 7 days from the 27th up through the February 3rd, but not counting the 3rd. So when you cross over a month, it's really tricky. You have to think about adding a 1 to that subtraction just to include that last day of the month. Similar for the very last period, we go from the 9th down to the 3rd. You might say, well, 9 minus 3 is 6. But again, we want to include this 9. So it's really, if you count tally marks from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, again, we get 7. So all the way through is 7. Now, before I do any of my calculations, I always add up this column of dates just to make sure you have the same number as the number of days in the month you're starting with in January. So we should get 31. And yep, 6 plus 11 plus 7 plus 7 does give me 31. So from here, all I need to do now is multiply the balance times the number of days at that balance. So that's like calculating up this part of our simpler problem, the balance times the number of days. Keep on doing that, and then we'll add those up. So on this first one, we're going to get 672.89 times 6 is 4,037.34. The next one, 622.89 times 11 is 6,851.79. The next one, I'll multiply out and I get 4680.69. And finally, the last one is $5,930.40. I can add these up and I get 21,500.22. And to turn this into an average daily balance, I just need to divide by the number of days in my month, which in this case is 31. So if I divide by 31, I'm going to get my average daily balance to be 21,522. Let me get rid of this stuff. Divide by 31, and that gives me an average daily balance of $693.56. So lastly, we can calculate our finance charge. So how do we calculate the finance charge? Finance charge is really just simple interest. So our simple interest is P times R times T, where T is the length of time, R is your annual percentage rate. P is normally principal, but we're going to call the principal in this case our average daily balance. And so let's call that FC for finance charge. So my finance charge is going to be the principal, or the average daily balance, $693.56. I need to multiply that by my interest rate of 0.189, so multiply by 0.189. And then I need to multiply by the length of time, or the term of the loan is how we've also said it. And so you might be tempted to say, well, we're looking at 1 month out of 12 months out of the year, so maybe this is 1/12. But the problem with that is each month has different number of days. February sometimes has 28, September has 30, January has 31. So to get a more accurate length of time or part of a year, we actually have to multiply by 31 out of 365. So what this gives me then, if I do all of this multiplication, my finance charge turns out to be $11.13. So when Carrie makes a payment, right off the top of that payment, $11.13 goes to interest, kind of just right out the window. And if we actually take this one step further, credit card companies to usually calculate your minimum payment by somewhere between 2 and 3% of your ending balance. So if we did this, if we take 3% of our ending balance, which was $847.20, if we got a statement from our credit card company, they would say the payment, the minimum payment, is 3% of that balance, which turns out to be $25.42. A lot of times, if this payment is less than 25, let's say it turned out to be $11, they might say, well, your minimum payment is a fixed $20. But in this case, let's go with the $25.42. And so she makes a payment of $25.42. The problem is $11 of that just, again, goes out the window. It's like burning up $11. The only amount that actually goes towards the balance is going to be $25.42 minus $11.13, which turns out to be $14.29. So out of that $25 payment, 14 of it knocks her balance down a little bit. $11 gets burned up. And so this is why they always say, never just make that minimum payment. Because if I made an additional $5, all of that $5 would go towards my balance. Or if I doubled my payment, I would knock that balance down quite a bit. So it's sad to only make that minimum payment. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of first how to calculate the average daily balance, use that to calculate the finance charge, and just really pay attention to the number of days that each balance is actually staying at. That's the hardest part. So hopefully we'll be able to do another one of these in class.